Good morning. Happy Monday. It is July 15th. This is episode 25. Mondays with Coach Rice. That's who you on with. Your host, Coach Rice, your professional certified life and health coach and trained mental health counselor, coming to you today with a subject called generational intelligence. What made me come up with this actual topic is as I was presenting last week at a conference, which was so nice, and I saw so many different generations operate in the same room. And I thought it was very interesting, and it made me think about, wow, in order for us to successfully work together, we have to understand generational differences. And so it was nice because everybody worked so well together, and you could see how the young people were versus the older generations. And I was like, wow, this is really nice. And so it made me say, let me talk about this. I have some other experiences where I had to really utilize my generational intelligence, and I'll talk to you about that as well. But I thought it was a subject that's meaningful, especially in today's society where things are changing so rapidly. And so, how do we deal with these differences? It's so crucial to really delve into it, because it gives us a chance to learn how to communicate and how to manage and collaborate in these diverse environments that we find ourselves in on a daily basis. And when I say generational intelligence, what I mean is just the awareness and the understanding of the different characteristics, values, communication styles in the context of workplace, communities, and families. Because we really approach these different arenas or cohorts, I would say. We approach these in a each and every day, or maybe multiple times of the day, but we are going to be in the midst of it. And we really want to recognize the unique contributions and the needs each generation bring to the relationship. That's so important. Now we have to be careful being so dogmatic in our approach about how we deal with one another, especially with all this information coming at us at one time. Because when I think about the generations before, which I'll talk about and give you the differences in them, and you will understand the importance of learning how to navigate through this. Because I had to ask myself, how do we navigate through a relational aspect of, of each generation without compromising our core values or our biblical perspectives or standards? That's important, because if we don't understand how we navigate through different generations, it's going to cause us to approach it in a dogmatic way, which cannot be, sometimes it's just not helpful, because we lose information. And I'll get more into it in depth as I'm going to talk about the key concepts of generational intelligence, to give you a chance to think through these things and how you see it in your own personal life. Then I'm going to talk about the different characteristics of each generation, and then I'll give you a scenario on how I've operated in different ones, and that way you can get see if it kind of help you out. Because I like to come on here to be, to empower, inspire, and give you guys information that I may have dealt with that I feel that's valuable. And I think this is a valuable subject, generational intelligence, because we're gonna see it each and every day in our relationships and in our family dynamics as well. And so the first key component I want to talk about is our awareness. We have to recognize and define the characteristics, the values of each generation, because there are different characteristics and values. I remember growing up, my mother, she was the silent generation, and I'll talk about that. But they had a different way they operate and move throughout the world because of what they were exposed to. Back then, that was when, well, I remember her telling me about radio. They listened to the radio. They didn't have a TV, and I was like, I was thinking to myself, "Wow, can you imagine not having a television?" I was like, "That's so different." I couldn't imagine the world without a television or internet or cell phone now. Even though I have been in generations where they didn't have a cell phone. I never dealt with the generation that didn't have a television. So the exposure of information that they had was very different from the exposure that we have today. They had to go access information if they needed it and had to find out where to find it. We, on the other hand, we have it at our fingertips at the drop of a click. That's a very different dynamic. So awareness is so key of how those differences and those nuances and characteristics and values play into the generations. Also, the historical and cultural context is important too because it shapes our experiences, our environment. What we are exposed to shapes our cultural context. And so we have to recognize that what they were exposed to in other generations prior to what we exposed to now is very different. So I had to ask myself, how do we general, you know, general, how do we deal with these values, these generational values, because they do impact decision making and problem solving abilities. They really do because they flow a little different when you exposed to so much. And I'll get into that deeper when I get into the toward the end. But also I'll answer a question: how do different generations perceive and prioritize work life balance? Because it's very different. And the reason why I want to talk about this because we are in the right now currently when you go to work, you are faced with baby boomers. You are faced with you working in collaboration with baby boomers, generation X, generation Y, which is the millennials, generation Z, which is the upcoming generation that's coming into the workplace. The generation Z could be one day your leaders, your managers. And so how do we deal with this and prioritize that in the workplace? And that's going to be key to learn because that's when we come into that particular era. And so we want to think about it. Another key component that we want to think about is how to utilize empathy in the context of that in those situations, because we want to appreciate, number one, we want to appreciate their the perspectives and experiences in different generations, because everybody has something that of value that they bring to the table. But what is that value and how do we utilize it in the right context? And then we want to show respect and consideration, empathy. We got to understand that the generation that's coming up, the generation Z, I would refer to them as generation Z. The information that's given to them is so fast and so much, but at the same time, they're that I would call that one of the characteristics that they do have is they consider themselves as independent thinkers. And so how do you utilize that, the fact that they are independent thinkers, but how do we help them to develop properly in that context? Because their approach is like, I know, I read, I saw, they have a different outlook on life, but also they have so much, but they don't know how to implement it because they lack the ability to be able to apply it to their lives in a healthy and useful way. That's the problem that they face because it's so much information. But it's not just so much information, they dealing with false information blending with the truth. So how do we take their stories and separate it from what the facts are? These are the things we have to learn. We have to have, what strategies can we implement to increase awareness and appreciation for these generational differences? All of us have to play a role in this, even in all generations across the board. We all have to approach this in a way that allows us to be aware, but also have empathy for what's actually in a context that's being played out in their environment, their lives, their experiences, and stuff like that. And so another key point is adaptability. How do we adapt to such a differences in these generations? It's in adaptation. Adaptability doesn't mean that I have to agree with you. It's like, how do I adjust my communication and management styles to suit the preferences of the generation, if that makes sense? I don't have to agree, but how do I communicate to give you facts and manage our styles together and be able to open up dialogue within our communication styles, because they're very different, believe it or not. I have to be able to understand the diversity in which the different things that we are dealing with, the diversity of not just the age differences, but the information, the diversity in the workplace, the diversity at home, how we deal with each other at home, how we deal with each other in communities, and being able to come in one setting and be able to include and accommodate for those differences. Learning, I had to ask myself, how can I encourage intergenerational collaboration and teamwork as I go through life and deal with, as I present, when I go present, I have to present in a way that I'm dealing with intergenerational an intergenerational audience. And so I have to approach it in a way that that I understand that we are going to have different perspectives, but how can we dialogue about those perspectives and come to the actual facts of the matter versus what we feel and versus our viewpoint of what we think? That's going to be important because the stories we tell ourselves are very different from the facts. And like the Bible's talk about, the truth will set you free. We always want to stand on truth versus the stories we tell ourselves, because the stories we tell ourselves often gets us in trouble. And so we want to make sure that we take into consideration of that. And effective communication is important when you're dealing with generational intelligence, because we want to make sure that we employ various communication methods to effectively reach different generations. Because you could be in a room with a generation like the silent generation. I'll say that I can speak to that because that's my mother and father's generation, where they were very different and they were not exposed to as much. But I can actually dialogue with them if they were still living, and it'd be a mode of teaching them technology or teaching them how we operate, and them in turn, they're communicating to me where the challenges that they're having, and me as a younger generation is stepping in and say, okay, their communication is different, so how do I reach them in a way where I'm not disrespectful, but in a way that I'm patient, because they don't have the same exposure that I've come across. So we have to be more patient with when it comes to each other and dealing with each other and when we're communicating, we have to be more patient, and we have to understand that we want to encourage dialogue and feedback across the generations, because what's happening is if we shut the younger generation down, then we lose so much information that can be helpful for not just them but us too. So we have to learn how to encourage communication, because because I'm gonna tell you, they're exposed to so much. You need to know what's behind the information that they are actually walking in and actually implementing on a daily basis, because they can be exposed to half truth, which is actually a lie, and which will definitely put them on the wrong path. A lot of times people don't make bad decisions because they wake up and say, I'm just going to make a bad decision. People make bad decisions because they lack knowledge. We are destroyed for our lack of knowledge. And so we have so many people stepping into our area of proximity with lack of knowledge, and we also have our lack of knowledge is the background in which they come from. That's where we fail if we're not careful of gathering information on a culture, in the context of the culture. That don't mean that we have to put down our standards, but we have to understand the background, and I'll show you how that kind of operate. And it made me question, like, what are the primary communication styles that is preferred by each generation? But I won't know that unless I understand each generation. So I'm gonna talk about the different generations, how they named them and why. And generations before silent generation, I won't really talk about too much, because if we really may not, either they are gone or either we caregiving for them if they're still around. But the generation, the reason why I'm starting at the silent generation, because that's my parents' generation. I was able to actually have a relationship to understand the different things that I understand, but I can't talk about the generation before because I don't have that experience, if that makes sense. I don't like talking about something I really don't quite understand. And so in the silent generation, the reason why they called them the silent generation, they also called them traditionalists, is because they in that generation they felt more emotionally strained, and they wasn't open to express it. It wasn't common in that generation to express like we express. We are very expressive these days, but that wasn't common, and that's why they call it the silent generation. It was like everything was so hush hush, so to speak, in that generation. But those are the people who were born between 1928 and 1945. The characteristics that they have in that particular generation, they worked very hard. Loyalty and respect for authority was huge in that generation, and they wasn't really good risk. They wasn't really adapting to risk taking. They wasn't risk takers. That wasn't it. They will work. You work. You go to work. You bring home. You make a living for your family, and sometimes the women stayed home with the children. It was very different in those times, but the way that they communicated was face to face. It wasn't that was very valuable to them in relationship. They related to each other face to face. There was no texting and all of that. If you wanted to see someone, you go and see them, and then when the telephones came out, you call them. So their preference is face to face. And so when you are dealing with the silent generation and you really want to have a good relationship with them, they want to lay eyes on you. They're not into texting. So don't when they very frustrated with the certain things you may say in a text message, or you have to be conscious of that they want to lay eyes on you. That's that generation that want to see you. They don't have time for all the phone conversation. They'll talk to you on the phone, but they want to see you. I have friends and mentors that are still in the silent generation. I know when I step into if I go to a certain town they're in, I need to go see them. I can't just call them on the phone. But since I'm away from them, they don't have a choice but to talk to me on the phone. But when I'm in a area, I need to go see them. And so that's important. That's very important for them. Then you got the baby boomers. The baby boomers, the reason why they call it the baby boomers, because after following the World War II, they actually the birth rate skyrocketed, so they call it the baby boomers. And so they from 1946 to 1964. I'm not in the baby boomers, but they more driven by ambition and personal fulfillment. They do value job security, and they loyal to their employers. They do prefer direct communication, face to face in meetings and stuff like that. Good afternoon, Jonathan. I see you. I'm good. You from Scotland. Wow, thank you for joining us this morning. And so, but I want to point out to I have siblings who are in the baby boomers era, and it's so true. They do. I noticed their work ethic. They're very hands on, and they do prefer direct communication. They prefer that they're not into texting that much, but they will text because that's the era we're in. But you had to show them a few things on how to use the phones when the phones came in. They had to learn, but they're very much more outspoken, so to speak. So, and they very deep on respecting your elders and things of that nature. They very big on that, and they value family. They really value family. So they very outspoken. So you may get the open, hey, you being disrespectful. You're gonna get. They're very opinionated too, and so because they lived a life where they saw a lot. So that's when they were exposed to now it's television era, and now they being exposed to like internet and all of this other stuff, but they not as open to grab everything that comes out. They know how to differentiate different information, truth versus false. They know how to kind of deal with that because they lived a life with experience, but they're not that. You don't see too many that's, unless they grew up learning about entrepreneurship, or depending on the culture they're in, their cultural background, you won't see a lot of entrepreneurship in that era, but you will see them where they value work ethic. Those are usually, they go to work and retire, and they very big. They not as risky as the next generation, but they do value those things. And then you got Generation X. That's my generation. These are the reason why they call it Generation X, because they kind of call them the middle child, the forgotten. So people who we the ones that don't really concern ourselves with the pressures of society and status. We more open to explore. That generation. That's 1965. I'm telling my age. No, 1965 to 1980 is the generation X. And so they call it the middle child generation. And so, but our characteristics are more independent and resourceful. We do value work-life balance and flexibility. We do prefer, when you communicate, we prefer straightforward, no nonsense communication. We comfortable with technology, and we value personal connections. We'll text. We kind of up on the text, and we kind of know about how to do this and how to do that. But we do have a different type of communication than the baby boomers and the silent generation. We straightforward, but we kind of, more curious. I would say we more curious to the what's coming, because we are resourceful. And so that's the communication style in my era. Our work ethic is different. We do value work-life balance, but we definitely need flexibility, and we do value those two things. We not as like, you will have some that we have careers that we may retire in, or we may get into entrepreneurship. We kind of in between that era. And then we have the millennials, Generation Y. They also refer to Generation Y. The reason why they call them millennials, because they was the first generation to reach adulthood when the new millennium quote came out in January 2000. That was when they celebrated the new millennium, is when the year of 2000 came. And so they call them millennials, and they born between 1981 and 1996. So these are our children. And so they very tech savvy and highly connected to the world around them. They value diversity, inclusivity, and they also value collaboration. So you got to know these things, because they love collaboration more than you think, but you have to come to them a certain way. They do seek meaningful work and personal development, but they do prefer digital communication. But they look for mentorship and feedback. They're very big on that, but they have to trust you in order to gain that kind of information. Because they so exposed to so much information, they really have to trust you, because they finding out that there's incongruencies and things that they were told versus what's happening. And this era is so different, drastically different, that they want mentorship, but they look for quality mentorship. So we have to be conscious of how these communication styles are playing out. So they don't pick up the phone a lot. They not pick up the phone, talk a long time. They more, if they are face to face with you, they'll talk to you, but they more texting. They'll text conversations back and forth constantly and be fine with it. They okay with that. And so because that's their preference of communication. But since they are open to feedback and mentorship, we got to keep that in mind. We can collaborate in that way by pulling out that piece. And so dealing with a lot of people get frustrated because they don't know how to deal with the millennials, and they not really that complicated. Those are the ones you can learn from. I'm gonna be honest with you. You can learn a lot from millennials because they very tech savvy. And they because they exposed to so much, we are there to help them differentiate the facts from the stories that they tell themselves or somebody else told them that may make sense, but it's not facts. We can help them differentiate that. And then we have the Generation Z, which coming up, they call those the Zoomers. And and this is the actually the first generation to enter the world with internet. they exposed to internet. um they do value diversity, and they feel this sense of like their own identity. They're starting to like understand unique identities about themselves. And so they are born 1997 to 2012. These are your future leaders and future people that you're going to be working next to sometimes. So you need to know how to navigate through that generation. That's going to be important, because though they are coming into the AI and highly proficient in technology. And if you ever notice, the kids that are born in like 2012 and 2011 and coming up, they literally can pick up a device and work it. Little kids like 2 years old picking up cell phones. They'll decline a call when they come in. That's how savvy they are. It's so interesting. But the generations that's coming need us to know how to navigate the relationships within the context of generational intelligence. They really need us so bad. And that's why we need to understand how to deal with them without compromising our values, but actually giving them the facts that they need so they can be better in life, because that's really the goal. We want them to be better and more efficient. And so, but they value this Generation Z, they value authenticity, transparency, and social responsibility, because I'm gonna tell you, they are so exposed that they asking questions that we was never ever able to ask when we were their age. They're so fast paced, and they prefer that we move and communicate in that way, because they're in a hurry. Time is of the essence with them. But they moving so fast that they miss so much. And how do we get them to slow down a little bit to gather all of that? You can do that. I've seen it done in a dynamic of communication. They do seek stability, and they the more entrepreneurial. They coming into entrepreneurship. They more driven toward that and those opportunities than they are just to go get a job, go to college, go get a job, and go and retire. You're not going to see that interest in that generation. Matter of fact, the millennials is starting to get away from that. You go to work and you make your money and then you retire. They starting to get into more like, wait a minute, what is my gifting? And I know how to do this. I can do this. They seeing opportunities pop up, and they taking advantage of it. They not afraid. So how do we mentor them in a way and allow them to give us information that we can learn from? That's the collaboration that we have to look for in order to step into generational intelligence. We have to be able to step into it like that. So let me tell you the key differences as we look at it in the context of families and work. So you have, the traditionalists, which is the silent generation of baby boomers that prefer face-to-face communication. Generational X, we value direct and efficient communication, and we appreciate personal connections. Where the millennials and Gen Z, they prefer the digital, and they comfortable with those platforms. So when we communicate, we want to keep in mind not to be so dogmatic and offensive when we get a long text from a certain generation that prefer to text us and then they don't call us back. We can't get offended, because we got to understand this is the era they're in. They flow a little different. But how do we not take it personal and kind of flow, kind of maybe help them navigate through that? Or really, sometimes when you are very authentic and you always have to I call it, put a disclaimer on how you relate and say, I know you prefer this style, but I prefer this. How can we make this work together for both of us? It's really that collaboration you may have to have, because the minute you say, I don't want to receive a text from you're not going to get any communication, more than likely. And so we want to make sure that we gather information. We want their information. We want to know where they are so that we can know how to navigate and help them grow. The goal is to help them grow, not to tear them down. And so we want to make sure that we operate and respect each other's values. Even they work values are different. Traditionalists, baby boomers, they value job security and loyalty. X, we seek work balance and flexibility. Millennials, they prioritize, they want meaningful work. They want personal development. They want social responsibility. That's what they're looking for. So when they come on a job, we want to keep in mind that they're looking. If they're at a job that they don't find meaning, they're not going to show up. How do we get them to show up? We must put them in the right position. We must put them in a position that actually will help develop them in where they want to go. So we have to know what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? They got so much information. They know where they want to go before we did when we were younger. They just don't know how to implement it. And that's where we come in at. We help them develop and grow and teach them how to implement to get in that particular job that they want. We help develop, we help lead them in the right direction, because based on the knowledge that we have, we can do that. Their technology use is very good. Traditionalists and baby boomers not so much comfortable with technology and the changes that's coming across technology. Matter of fact, they're kind of fearful of, like, I don't want to put my information out there because this can happen. It's a very different challenge for them when it comes to this rapid technology changes that's coming. But generational X, we adapt to it because we still appreciate we appreciate the technology. We like, oh my God, we excited about it. Millennials and Gen Zs are very tech savvy, and they expect technology to continue to integrate, and they ready for it. They are literally ready for the upcoming integration in all aspects of life. So we have to really recognize that this is what's happening with us. So it made me think about, when it comes to like family, how do we actually utilize generational intelligence in the context of communities. So let's say communities, so to speak. So sometimes in the community you gathered around and you're kind of going over some information, you're going to see maybe millennials, possibly, but Gen X is more so than anything. Gen Zs, you're going to see them kind of having conversations off to the side if we're not moving fast enough. So in order for you to, in communities, you have to establish some ground rules before you start so they can catch up to the ground rules. Because if you don't come in with ground rules, like such as, please, we ask that you do not have side conversations while we're talking, you're going to get them doing the side conversations because they don't have any rules that you have not given them any rules to follow. And so if you give it to them, they will respect it in the context of a workplace or community if you put it out there. But you have to communicate that to them. They very information driven, so you must give them that information before you start. But if you don't, it's a possibility that you're going to get those side conversations amongst each other. How do you deal with that without removing them from removing the support system that they feel they have, or the trust? Because they really big on trust. They really want authenticity. You have to be authentic with them. But you also want to make sure that you support their the generation that they in by just simply saying, hey, you have very good value to bring to the table. Why don't you share with us what what you have for this particular subject? I guarantee you'd be surprised their answer. They will have an answer, and it would be and they it's very they do have valuable information, but they sharing it amongst each other because they don't quite know how to deal with us. But when we open that door for them to get in, they feel supported, validated, and so they're gonna bring the value with us, and and be open to hear what they have to say, because they are in a generation where they are gathering information. We want to make sure that they have the truth, but we also want to make sure that we're learning too, because they very tech savvy. I pull on my great nieces and nephews for technology because I have no clue of what to do. And so once they teach me, I'm good. But I go to them. They tech savvy. They know what they're doing. And so they're getting information, but we want to make sure that they know how to facilitate and apply it to their life. If they don't know how to apply it to their life, then it's useless. And so we want to make sure we do that. In a family dynamic, I'm going to tell you a story before I end that's very crucial. 16-year-old come to me and say, I'm ready to not related to me, but I'm ready to go to the next level with my boyfriend. And I'm like, okay, what do you mean by, I know what you mean, but I have to ask anyway because it could mean something different. They have a different language they use now. So I want to make sure that I'm clear on what they mean when they say I want to go to the next level. I'm ready to have sex with my boyfriend. And I'm like, the mother in me is like, the mother role in me is like, no, we don't do that. Don't you do that. The Christian in me is saying, no, we don't. The Bible say this, fornication is a sin. And then the coach in me comes up and say, I need some more information because I had to go back to when I was 16. My mother used to say, hey, you getting fast, so we're going to take you to birth control place and get you some birth control. But now it's like, how do we navigate that conversation in the world they're in today, because they're exposed to something totally different. And so me as a coach, my next question is, are you being pressured by the person that you want to, lose your virginity to? Are you being pressured? If the answer is no, if the answer is yes, that's a different conversation. That's a conversation of more questions in that area. But if the question is, if they've been pressured, then I have to talk about the value of, what's the, how valuable they are. I have to talk about that anyway, but I have to open up the dialogue for that, because now I have to get, versus being dogmatic and putting rules on this teenager that's coming to me for safety and support. I have to honestly be honest and open up factual information. So it's more like, now the next question is, what makes you want to do this? I need to gather, why do you want to step into this area where it's not just stepping into a whole new realm in your life. This is important information. So let's gather background information on why you want to step into this realm. But me as a coach, I want the 16-year-old to understand that, yes, it is important to understand that your virginity is very important. But the most important thing I want you to understand is what you're really giving up. And if you can understand what you're giving up factually, not the story you tell yourself, but if I can give you the facts around what you're giving up, you're not just giving up your external body parts. You're giving up your heart to a person who you don't know that's deserving of it. That's number one. So when you give it up, are you willing to suffer the consequences of the what's going to come behind that? Because it's not just anybody can lay together in a bed and take on the act, but can they? But let's deal with the heart issue, because your heart is involved. No matter how you put it, your heart is involved, and let's have that dialogue so you can understand how valuable you are, and then you get to decide from the perspective that we go into, deep dive into, if you want to make that decision or not. My goal is to persuade you the value side versus giving up something so important that's precious, which is your heart. And so it's really teaching that platform, but opening up that level of trust that we can have that dialogue, because I can't expect her to conceptualize at the level that I conceptualize. Because when I was 16, when they said the Bible said don't do it, I wanted to do it just that much more. And basically because I didn't have the Holy Spirit dwelling inside of me to give me to make a conscious effort. I didn't grow up. I grew up learning about morality, but without the Holy Spirit, I couldn't effectively walk it out. And so I had to understand that now when I talk to a 16-year-old or when I talk to other people, I have to gather information of their background in order to help them grow in a certain area. I can't just assume or be dogmatic and say you need to do this, this, and this, because they're gonna want it more. And my goal is not to get them to make my goal is to get them to make the right decision based on fact, not on what they heard or opinions or feelings or stories they tell themselves. I want them to make a sound decision on facts and understand what they're getting into so they can make a sound decision. So I want to understand, our goal is to understand and respect generational differences so we can enhance teamwork, improve communication, and make sure that we foster support, empathy, and all of this in the relationships that we have, but also giving them sound truth, which is factual information to go with the stuff, with the things that they're dealing with, so they can gain an understanding and not be so judgmental, because we will actually lose them in the future where they going on information gathered without the support, because they don't have the trust. When you can trust the person that you're getting the information from, that's giving you facts, you can learn a lot. And so that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we create a supportive, trusting relationship, but also keep our standards at the top, at the forefront, but help them grow and foster relationships so that they can do the same. And so they can be effective as they gather all of this information that they're getting. We want them to actually be able to understand what they're actually doing versus just going out there trying to fit all this information in the context where it don't fit. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Making sure that we are intelligent in those areas so we can understand how to operate and how to communicate with each generation coming up, and how to help and mentor them going further as they grow. And so we want to definitely get that. I want to tell you about an upcoming event, which is Girl Power Summit. They call it Girl Power Summit, but because that's the kind of group that's putting it on, that's actually hosting it. But it's actually going to be male speakers, and it's actually going to be for men as well. Actually, it's going to be this event is definitely going to be inspiring personal and professional growth. So the topics will be great, and so it's free. It's going to help you learn how to reconnect with your dreams. It's going to help you transform your mindset. If it's going to help enhance relationships with yourself and others, and also talk about true intimacy and build a dream career. All of these topics are going to be talked about through the days of August 6th through the 9th, and it will be at 6:30 p.m. starting at 6:30 p.m. through 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You do not have to attend every last one. You can pick the speaker you want to listen to or the subject you want to listen to, but you have to register. You register by clicking the link that I have. I will put it in my Mondays with Coach Rice today. Anybody can attend it around the world. Just remember the time is Eastern Standard. And you click the link and you register, and it's free. I hope to see you there. I will be one of the speakers. I hope to see you there. It's an event you don't want to miss. My goal is to have the person who's hosting it. Next Monday, I will have her, Lord willing, to be on my podcast so we can talk about it more. But I just wanted to come to you guys and talk to you about that. So I would say happy Monday. Hope that you enjoyed this particular podcast, and hope that you learn more about generational intelligence, because I was kind of bringing it from a general standpoint, but it's so much more to it. And so just give you the background and helpful information that you need. So have a great Monday, and happy Monday to you, and hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thanks for supporting me and showing up. Please, if you feel this was useful, please share, subscribe if you don't do nothing else but share and comment, and so we can help others. So I just wanted to give out a tidbit of information. If you want to set up a consult with me, please do so by clicking the link. Talk to you soon. Happy Monday. Enjoy your Monday.